Welcome to the show, All Things Writing. I am your host, Brian the Writer. Let me take you on a journey through my writing life and introduce you to some of the amazing talent that exists in the writing world. Whether you are looking for a little advice or just to catch an interesting interview, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. All Things Writing starts now. Hello, my friends, and welcome to Brian the Writer. Today, you actually get a little bit of the best of both worlds. You get the best of All Things Writing and my Patreon channel, because what I'm doing is I'm actually doing this show as sort of an All Things Writing episode, but I'm also taking it and I'm putting it on Patreon, and we're going to make it free on Patreon so people can actually go see it. Very exciting, fun stuff. I enjoy doing things like this. Today's episode, by the way, is coming to you from two people who contributed to my question. What would you like me to talk about? Two people. I mean, other than my brother giving me essentially who's mom's favorite kid and why is it him, which we all know it's me, but that's all right. We'll let it go. And then some other very strange, the meaning of life kinds of questions. I don't know that I'm capable to answer that. Anywho, today we're going to deal with some of your questions to me. We're going to talk about them. Again, these came from podcaster Diego and my good friend Brian Grover. So I'm going to put their links up here, and you can go visit their websites and check them out and see who they are. I appreciate their support. My biggest fans. Anyway, so yeah, let me, and I want to say Michael Thompson, who I talked about recently on the show, by the way. Really great writer, well worth checking out. So we'll put his link up there as well. Check these guys out. I really appreciate their support over the years, and they're really good friends anyway. It's, as I've talked about before, in the writing business, you really have to have friends. You get by with a little help from my friends. Yeah. Anyway, you guys don't want to hear me sing. So let's get on with the questions. Let's talk about the different things. So the first question is, how do you know what to write about? And it's an interesting enough question. How do I know what to write about, and where does the idea come from? That's a good question, and it's a question sort of like it's kind of like one of those questions like at the beginning of time, you know. First, there was the question: how do you know what to write about, and where do those ideas come from? Well, we'll take the easier of those two questions first. Where do ideas come from? Ideas come from a lot of different places, and I will say, you know, the best answer I've ever heard is they're a used idea store in Utica. Stephen King said that once, but I think my best ideas honestly just come from living my life. It's like I'm fond of saying, you cannot be a good writer if you're not going out and living your life, because you're missing all the stories, the story input, right? That comes into your brain and forms the cruxes of your stories. For example, if you look at my character Cece in the book The App, Cece is an amalgam of a lot of different women that I've met over my lifetime. And she's sort of like, she has kind of this inner strength that she doesn't even realize she really has, because to her, she's not being strong, she's living her daily life. She's a great mom. She's holding it all together in spite of some very difficult circumstances. And then she has thrown on top of it that, oh, by the way, she also is now a vampire hunter, so deal with that one. It's hard. Real life is hard. Being an adult is hard. Adulting is hard. And I suppose the idea for her is multiple characters from my childhood that I sort of put together into one person. You get ideas about people by simply watching. Malls are great when we still had malls. Going to Walmart, going and just being observant and opening your eyes and watching things happen around you, you're going to see different people and they're going to strike you as interesting characters. Now, sure, vampires. Where does a vampire come from? Obviously, I don't go walking around I don't go into the local grocery store and see vampires. But, a lot of that comes from movies and lore and legend and other books I've read. We are the sum of our parts as writers, and we cannot avoid that reality. If you go out and, for example, Nosferatu, the movie that just came out, Nosferatu, very good movie, by the way. Very, very much enjoyed it. The cool part about it, to me, is it stuck closer to the book, which I loved. And I enjoyed the movie that way. But it fed the imagination, fed my imagination. It told me things about how I would in the future write my vampires. It's very interesting to think that if building a story, building a character, building an idea is really all about building blocks. It's about building pyramids. It's about building any kind of big building. You have to have a solid foundation to build from. And that all comes from just your observation of humans around you and people around you and sort of taking that into account when you write them. Deciding what to write about is a little bit harder. There's a wonderful meme out there. I'll see if I can find it and put it up on the screen. About an author who has his work in progress. And when we authors talk about our WIP, we mean work in progress. It's a thing we are actively working on at any one time. That's always when other ideas show up, and then we have those other ideas and we have to deal with them and blah 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 blah. We can get sidetracked very, very easily. So what I tend to do, and I may have mentioned this on the show before, I take those ideas and I'll sit down and I'll write them out. I'll write out, I don't know, maybe a chapter, anyway, 1,000 words or so of that idea, and I'll save it. And the reason I'm doing that is, in essence, I don't want to lose that idea because it might be a perfectly good idea. It's also a bit of a salve over that itch to go and write something else for a while. You're giving in to temptation without giving all the way into that temptation. You are saving your idea, and you're putting it off in your. I've got an actual file in my computer here that is just saved ideas, only saved ideas. It's and when I'm done with one project, I will go through there, I will comb through there and see what kind of jumps out at me. Things that I might want to work on, ideas I had. I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. There's a lot of duds in there. I've had plenty of ideas over the years that once I thought about it, I'm like, that's not a good plan. Let's let that one go by the wayside. Happens to us all. But and sometimes it'll be planned out. I have been planning to write another sci-fi novel for a while now. I still have not done it. And I think part of the reason I haven't is because I've been so fixed on horror lately. And honestly, that is kind of where my career is going anyway. Horror is it for me. I love horror. What can I say? Horror, thriller, dark mystery. It's all good stuff, right? I enjoy that. So that's kind of how I choose what to write. I go back and look through what I've got in that saved file. I probably have enough saved ideas in that file at this point that I'll die with some of them completely undone. And the sad part is every time, every month or so, I'll have a new idea strike me and I'll jot it down Who knows? But, it might be kind of fun to go back through and just put together a bunch of things from my past, and maybe just do a quick, short story on, and just say da 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 da. This is the story, and then you know put it together in a collection or something. I don't know. It's an idea. So anyway, so that for that question. How about the next question? The next question was best advice to share with a first time author. There's advice we tend to give new authors that I personally kind of detest a little bit. We say button seat, hands on keyboard. Okay, that's like saying in order to get better at driving, you need to drive. Practical. That's not practical advice. That's just reality. So I don't know that information or that really does anyone much good. I will tell you that I am a firm believer in setting goals insofar as they are clear and measurable. So I'm going to write 15 minutes a day. I'm going to write a half an hour a day. I'm going to write, an hour a day. Bare minimum for me, by the way, is 1 hour for me to sit down. I've showed this before. This is my, it's dusty. This is my hourglass, literally. Gives me exactly 1 hour. And you can see the sand falling down. I can hear it falling down too. This is my goal. Tells me when I've reached my minimum, my bare minimum. But that's the trick, right? Don't make this something that you hit your goal and you like, okay, turn off computer, go home. No, don't do that to yourself. When you hit your goal, if you don't feel like you're ready to give up the keyboard, don't. Keep going. Keep going. It's not going to hurt you. It'll only help. There are times that I sit down and I'll flip that hourglass over and I had 500 words of complete nonsense on the page. It's just the day. The not enough caffeine. I don't know. It's some days are more brilliant than others, and there are other days that I sit down and I'll flip that thing over and I'll get 1,500 words, and they're all very good. Right frame of mind, right zone. I don't know. There has to be a reason, but I don't know what that. I don't know what that reason would be. Anyway, so that's my best advice to writers. Set a goal which is measurable, observable, and achievable. Don't set yourself a goal, I'm going to sit down and write 6 hours a day. Don't do that. Don't do that. First of all, you're not going to do that. Nobody does that. The professionals, I don't even think, I don't know of any professional that sits down and writes for 6 hours a day. It's a lot of writing. I mean, like consistent writing. There are people that may get a total of 6 hours in the course of the day. But that's because they start in the morning and then they take a little break. They go for a walk. They come back, a little light breakfast, maybe sit down for a couple more hours. Okay, so yeah, you could probably get 6 hours that way if you're professional and you're rolling hot and heavy. But 6 hours a day for somebody who's not doing it, anyway. Like I said, 6 hours a day probably doesn't happen. So make them attainable. And I guess I would put another piece of advice in there as well. Don't be so hard on yourself if you don't make it. There are people that good. So years ago, I was trying to lose weight. I'm not a small guy. Us Polacks tend to be. We look a little bit better when we're a little heftier. When we start to get scrawny, we don't look too good. We look like we need medical treatment or something. So I don't mind carrying a little bit of weight with me. But I was trying to lose weight, and I get so mad at myself when I wouldn't meet my goals. But that is counterproductive. In anything you're trying to do, it's counterproductive if you set a goal and you get extremely mad at yourself because you didn't achieve those goals. I don't care if you're trying to stop smoking, cut down on the calories. I just had a piece of cake. That probably was a bad decision on my part. but boy, was it good. Yeah. So don't be upset with yourself if you didn't meet that hour, didn't meet that 15 minutes, or whatever the goal is you set for yourself. It happens. Happens to all of us. There are times, and there's actually good science behind this. There are times when I have blown off writing to go play video games. There is science to suggest that that's actually not such a bad thing. It may sound like nonsense, but it's what the brain needed at the time. So, you know. I also don't mind it too much if I have been writing a lot during the course of the day and I don't sit down and read later on. I'd love to read more. I honestly don't read as much as I should. And I think that's true of all of us. But, when you've been writing for 4 hours or 3 hours or something like that, you know, uh, there are things that go on in our lives that kind of sidetrack us. When that happens, don't beat yourself up. That's called living life. Just, get up the next morning, brush the dust off, try again. Try again. Consistency is the key. And I don't necessarily mean consistency in terms of succeeding. Consistency is in trying. That's the only way you get better at anything is trying. So that's my advice. Anyway, that's how I would answer that question. Okay, so the next question, moving on. Oh, I'm going to save the next question. What song would I pick if I had to choose one that best represents your writing? Wow. That is a hard one. That's a hard one because I don't think in terms of putting my words into music, but I think it's a good question. A song that always speaks to me is, and I have the title written down for a reason that I won't necessarily share, but I've got the title written down because I think I love the piece. It's an orchestra piece. Okay. Eric Satie, the composer, or Satie, I don't know. He wrote Gymnopedia number 1 is one of my favorite pieces of music. I know it's not as sexy as like Highway to the Danger Zone or something like that, or something by Kenny Loggins, but to me, it's one of the most beautiful pieces of music. It's very, very moving. It's on my track that I play while I'm writing. I would also say Toccata and Fugue, which is a ton of fun. By the way, it's now everybody knows Toccata and Fugue from Dracula. Da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da. But here's the thing. If you're familiar with that piece and you've never listened to the rest of the toccata, do it. It's actually a beautiful piece of music. It's gorgeous, and my organ playing buddies out there will tell you that of course it's beautiful because it's played on an organ, and organs are beautiful. Fair enough. I guess that's kind of these big gothic music pieces. I absolutely love. Okay, what's my favorite cryptid and why? I love this. I absolutely. The funny thing is that when this question came up, I instantly had an answer. My answer? The chupacabra. Why? Well, okay, the chupacabra actually is. Chupacabra is actually a really fairly recent entry into the world of the cryptids. The reason I think they're cool as all get out is chupacabra, bloodsuckers of South America. It started in South America and Mexico, so Central America, when there was a huge rash of farm animals that were turning up without any blood in them, allegedly without any blood in them. And there's a guy who coined the term chupacabra. He was he studied the reports of these animals being found dead, and kind of coined that term chupacabra. I don't know. I love the idea of something that can be so commonplace that it kind of hides in the background. And if you think about the chupacabra, it's almost like a hybrid between a vampire and a space alien. Some of the early drawings actually look very much like a space alien would today, which brings up some interesting questions because there have been reports of aliens like abducting farm animals and removing all their blood and removing organs to study them. That's a thing. In the drawings of the chupacabra, the early drawings, people who have allegedly sighted one look a bit like aliens. The mythos surrounding chupacabra is just interesting to me. They could look like dogs. They could look like aliens. They could look like humanoid, and they're so sort of semi-quasi common looking that would be easy to miss if you were just driving on the road and looked out into the world. No, I don't think the chupacabra really exists, but that's my cryptid, my favorite cryptid, and kind of why. Second of course would be Nessie, Loch Ness Monster. I love Nessie. And I think Nessie is actually more likely to be real than chupacabra, because there's just so much of the ocean that we don't know anything about. By the way, I'll share with you a crazy theory. One of my crazy theories is that there's actually, there could be humanoid creatures that live at the bottom of the ocean, living a whole separate society down there. I know, crazy. Crazy. I love it. That's the heart of a writer, honestly. Sometimes we have these crazy ideas and we capitalize them. These are the ideas that we write down. And when we get them captured, we use them to feed our imaginations and feed our storylines. So great fun, great fun. All right, so the last question. I'm done writing my first book, and this comes from Podcaster Diego. The cryptid ones, of course, came from Michael Thompson, because he loves cryptids. He's my cryptid guy. If you Winslow Hoffner's Amazing Adventures, those are great books. Michael Thompson, he's wonderful. So I'm done writing my first book. It's been sitting there waiting for me to send it to a publisher. Can't seem to pull the trigger and submit. Is this normal? Psychologically speaking, guess what? You're normal. You're completely and totally normal. I was talking about this with some colleagues of mine. There's the fear of failure. We all have that fear of failure. I do too. Whenever I send off my babies to my babies, to a publisher or to an editor or whatever, I am ripping open my heart and I am saying, judge me. I don't want to scare you, but that's psychologically what you're doing. Here's the part that I think most people seem to forget. You can't pull the trigger on that work, but here's the problem. So you see, the editors and publishers who get it, and perhaps agents, if you're sending this book around to an agent, they know it's not going to be perfect. They know that. I jokingly say editors thrive off the tears of authors. Editors and publishers all want the same thing that the author wants, honestly. They want a good book to be pushed out at the end that people are going to enjoy. That is the goal of everyone involved. However, the editor and the publisher, they didn't have your story. They didn't have the idea in your head. you did. So to push that out into the world, I'm going to flip the script on this. I'm going to say, you don't have a right to rob the world of your creativity. It is a gift that you have that you can share with the world. Yeah, it's hard, especially when it's your first book, because you know what that rejection feels like, and you don't want to. You don't want to have that rejection. You don't want to have people look at it and say, this is terrible. Well, here's a news flash for you. If you go on Amazon and you look at people that just, like self-publish books and shove them out there, there's a huge difference. There's a huge chasm between people who took the time to do it right and people who didn't. People who just wrote any blithering nonsense and hit publish. Yeah, you can do that, but you can tell right away. You can tell right away it wasn't done right, wasn't done professionally. Didn't get shown to an editor or a publisher or whatever. It didn't follow the process that I am a big fan of, to make sure you're putting something out there that people are going to read and enjoy and love. My first book called No Name. I don't even sell it anymore. It's terrible. It's not terrible from a storyline perspective. The story is actually great. I stand by the story. Someday I'm going to actually revisit the whole storyline, completely clean it up, and I may reissue it as a brand new book, because the story is lovely. I love the story, but that's imagination. It's the imagination of an author, right? The book itself was not very good. Technically, it was not very good. But people still really liked it. That's the funny part. They loved the storyline. So people will forgive you for making minor errors, if they're only minor errors. If you've done your job, send it through an editor, done it right, they will forgive you. So you've written your first novel. You either get it out to a publisher, get it out to an editor, get it all cleaned up. Either way, you need to get that book out there. You need to share it with the world. That's the first step. And by the way, if you've done it once, that's proof you can do it. So you can do it again. I'm on, book 13? If I can do it, anyone can do it. All right, so that's it for all things writing, this interesting little Patreon question and answer session, but not Patreon. It's for everybody, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, we'll make it free on Patreon so everybody can look at it. I want to thank you all for joining me today. It's been great fun. I really enjoyed kind of doing the question and answer thing. Until next time, you guys have a wonderful day. Bye-bye. This has been another amazing episode of All Things Writing. If you heard something that got your wheels spinning, check out the links in the show notes. Also, please follow the show and remember to leave those reviews. Those simple acts of kindness mean the world to us. Hop on over to briannowak.com, and that is Brian with a Y, and check out my latest novels. I'm on Amazon or wherever you buy your ebooks. And as a reminder, the music you heard on the show today was used under license from the artist Ryan Encona. Thanks for listening to the show and have a blessed day.